does she think she is?
Well, that's my sister, baby. And she's a whole lot of woman.
This is the Blood and Black Rum Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from exploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
Doing pretty well. We apologize for not being in here last week. We had wanted to do a Valentine's Day episode, but unfortunately, I came down with the plague. My whole family did, and we weren't able to record. And it's probably for the best because no one wanted to listen to me hack and snivel and sneeze my way through the episode. So everybody actually lucked out on that one. So instead of recording, we decided we were going to take another week off, not do a Valentine's Day episode because we didn't really have anything picked out anyway. We've done a lot of the Valentine's Day stuff. So
I think we've done all that we need to do.
Like the majority of the ones that we've exhausted the best of the genre.
We've dug into the well of like Thanksgiving and New Year's, and we can stop. You can stop. We don't need to like venture further down Turd Mountain.
I mean, there's obviously still some that are in the Valentine's Day category, but
yeah, we can move on. We don't have to cover the whole oeuvre of everything.
So instead of doing a Valentine's Day episode, we figured we'd just take one more week off and come back. And since we're still in February, it's Black History Month. We haven't really celebrated that this year. And, we have also found that we have a dearth of blaxploitation episodes on the show anyway. I think we counted it and there was like 3. I think that we've only done 3 or so. So we decided that we were going to do a blaxploitation episode. Kind of dig in again. We've done a couple of bigger ones. I guess I don't know if I would call Black Caesar a bigger blaxploitation, but it is to a certain extent a popular one. And then we've also done The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which I think no, actually it's not the most recent because we did Shaft just last year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did we do that one in February too? I can't remember. I think we might have. I think we did it yeah.
Well, seeing as your memory is totally shot on being the curator of our episodes, because you were listing off blaxploitation films, remember when we did that episode of Sweet Sweetbacks? It's like we've never done Sweet Sweetback. Talked about it a lot. No, we never done it. And you're like, you're right. And the same thing too, Coffy. You're like, oh, remember that episode Coffy? It's like, we didn't do Coffy?
I still have a weird memory like we did Coffy. I don't know why. Because I feel like I very recently watched Coffy. And I don't know, like, not that I don't rewatch movies a whole lot to the point where I'm like, why would I have rewatched Coffy at that time? But I don't know.
Yeah, and we did Shaft late. We did it in March.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, so we've done a few. We haven't done that many blaxploitation movies. We haven't we haven't even hit some of the biggest blaxploitation movies. Like I thought we did Coffy, but we didn't. We haven't done like Sweet Sweetbacks, which is probably one of the bigger blaxploitation movies that you could do. We did do Shaft, so that's a pretty big one. But it was time to dig into the canon of blaxploitation movies and do another one for this Black History Month. And we decided to forego doing Coffy since we've both seen it like a few times. And though, I do enjoy watching Coffy, it's kind of nice sometimes to get on and do an episode where it's a movie that either neither of us have seen or we haven't seen it in a while. And this movie in particular, I have not seen in a very long time. It's probably been a decade maybe since I last watched it. So it was something that I wanted to do and kind of watch it again because I think I've only seen it once prior to this. But we're still talking about a Pam Grier movie. It's not Coffy, but it's her alter ego, Foxy Brown. How do you feel about going on to Google when you do a Google search and you search Foxy Brown, and the first results that you get are not the movie? It's the singer Foxy Brown. And not only that, you do get an IMDb entry, but it's the singer Foxy Brown's IMDb page and not the movie. You have to scroll down to probably the 10th or 12th result on Google to actually see the Foxy Brown IMDb page. It's kind of a bizarro thing.
Well, that's just showing how fucking old we are, because I was like, who the fuck is Foxy Brown?
True.
Though she's 45, so it's not like she's,
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting because I was like scrolling because I'm one of those lazy searchers. Like, I'm just going to type in Foxy Brown. I'm not going to do like Foxy Brown 1974 movie, IMDb, blah, blah, blah. I just like type it in, Foxy Brown, Google, take me where I want to go. Read my mind, Google. And it was just funny because I'm like scrolling through. I'm just like, what the fuck? Where's the fuck is the IMDb page for this movie? And it took me, like what they call like the line, under the line of like your pages. It was way under the line of the front page. So it's crazy. I didn't quite understand why that was. But whatever the case, doing Foxy Brown, Pam Grier movie. You guys are welcome, of course, because anytime we're talking about Pam Grier, the queen, it's a great time. Anytime she's in a movie, it's a great time. Now, Foxy Brown is not it's not the first Pam Grier blaxploitation movie, because Coffy was done in 1973, just prior to this one, also by Jack Hill. And that was probably can be considered Pam Grier's like actual foray into blaxploitation. Previously, even before that, there was a couple other films that she did with Jack Hill as well, but those are technically considered like women in prison Philippines films, because at that time too, like with the proliferation of the blaxploitation genre and all kinds of exploitation and grindhouse movies, women in prison flicks were pretty big at that time, and a lot of them were shot in the Philippines because it was cheap. They could go around and say, that extra, I just want that guy, and they're like people in the Philippines who are like, sure, yeah, we'll be in the movie. And so that was a huge thing at the time of going to the Philippines and shooting one of these types of movies. So Pam Grier did do like The Big Dollhouse previously before that, but I think Coffy was probably the big one where she really got into the blaxploitation genre. And then just after that, because of the popularity of Coffy and how well it was received, they went on to do Foxy Brown right after that and pretty much copy a lot of the same ideas of Coffy and just kind of merge them into a different movie.
Made it more of a Bond film.
Kind of, yeah. A little Bond, a little bit more, as we'll talk about, a little bit more exploitative than Coffy was. Yeah, there's just, it's basically like one of those movies where they copied the template and then transposed it and then like changed a few things around. And we'll talk about that as we get more into the actual movie itself. But I mean, for the intro, we usually do this. You've seen Foxy Brown before, right?
It's been about over 10 years. I saw it like sophomore year in college, probably, when I was watching, during the time period in college when I was watching, just a bunch of random shit that I was like,
historical feature films that you were like thinking about.
Because it's not like it was ever anything that was, playing on Ben Mankiewicz's Turner Classics things. Hi, I'm Ben.
Well, I actually did catch Coffy on Turner Classics. I think it was actually a weird late night showcase of Rob Zombie's. So Rob Zombie did have his own TCM,
Are you sure it's TCM and not ACM?
AMC.
AMC.
No,
whatever.
I'm pretty sure it was TCM, and he had like Rob Zombie's Monster Hour or something like that, where he would go into like all of his grindhouse and horror inspirations, and I think it was Coffy. I can't remember if it was Coffy or Foxy Brown, and I'm getting the two kind of like confused in my mind, but I'm pretty sure it was at least one of the two that were shown on that like Rob Zombie's late night movie. And I caught it then, and I was like, this is a great damn movie. Because I was probably like maybe 16 at the time, 15, 16, and had never really seen a blaxploitation movie before, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, because I believe it did air uncut as well. And I was like, wow. This is this is my kind of movie as a, pubescent teenager. So yeah, I did see, I was either Coffy or Foxy Brown, and then whichever one it was not, I went through and I watched that one too. So yeah, I caught it back then, but it's like I said, it's been years since I've actually seen this one. Coffy I've seen a couple more times since then, but yeah. And then actually too, I had this one. I had serendipitously had this one on Blu-ray, and I had never opened it for whatever reason. It's just sitting there in the packaging.
You were right not to, because that Blu-ray that you got is the definition of shoddy.
Bare bones, that is for sure. Yeah, Olive Films, who is the maker of that Blu-ray, they did put out this Blu-ray.
No, it's no Vinegar Syndrome.
That's right. They also put out Coffy and a few others. Friday Foster, which we haven't done, which is another Pam Grier movie. They put out Hammer, which we talked about possibly doing instead of Foxy Brown, and we ended up deciding on Foxy Brown. They put out a few of those at the same time, and yeah, they are bare bones, and they don't really have, they got nothing on them, not even subtitles,
which is unacceptable.
I agree. In this day and age, no subtitles.
Because especially in a lot of these like films before like 1990, some of the audio that like you're listening to, like, and some of the things that people say is kind of muffled, and you can't understand what the fuck they're saying. Which so it's always great to just have the subtitles on, to help you kind of like pay attention to what's going on.
Sure.
But so because there was no subtitles, I had to have the volume cranked up, which was bad because the mixing for the soundtrack and the audio for the dialogue, two different scales. So as soon as that fucking nice R&B disco-y shit kicks in, it's at like 24 compared to like the whisper that I was hearing for like the voices. So it's just like they're having a conversation, then all of a sudden it's like Earth, Wind, and Fire straight in my living.
Someone walking by outside thought you were listening to the 1974 Earth, Wind, and Fire concert VHS tape. Yeah,
which isn't a bad thing. I was gonna say, because Earth, Wind, and Fire are great, but still
true. Yeah, no, I agree too. Yeah, and particularly in this movie, it has a lot of scenes where there's like either like a radio playing in the background that they're talking over, and yeah, it gets subtitles would have been nice to have for some of those scenes, especially for you getting blasted out, breaking your windows with some nice steamy 70s sex romp soundtrack. All right. Let's take a break real quick, talk about the beer that we have on the show, because we got a special guest on here. One that I think we've had this brewery on maybe once or twice.
We've had him on a couple of times.
Couple of times, yeah. It's not one that I actually get a lot of, so it's kind of interesting. But anyway, so I was on the lookout for, like, I wanted one that kind of matched the theme a little bit, matched the Black History Month a little bit. So,
which, by the way,
yeah,
I think we're kind of doing a disservice to Black History Month by doing blaxploitation, because most of these films are, white produced, and
this one specifically,
white written just for make the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, we are, probably would have made more sense to do like a black directed movie, something like that. But Yeah, instead, unfortunately, we do have Jack Hill here, a whitest white guy who comes in and fucking makes all these blaxploitation movies to churn them out and make money. But it's the idea that counts is in my yeah. No, I didn't mean it to be in poor taste, but yeah. So anyway, we have on the show today we have Brooklyn Brewing, which you've actually been to.
Which I was gonna say too. Also, it's got exploitation in the name, so it's not like
Right
there.
Yeah, it's pointing it itself out to you.
Yeah. And yes, I have been to Brooklyn Brewery. Back in 2021, when I went down to go see Drive By Truckers, which if you guys don't like them, go fuck yourselves. But no, seriously, listen to their shit; they're good. But when I went to go see Drive By Truckers down at Brooklyn Bowl down in Brooklyn a couple years ago, surprisingly, like right across the street from Brooklyn Bowl is Brooklyn Brewery, and it's like, oh my god, it's so cool. And we, me and my buddy who I went to the show with, we went to Brooklyn Brewery, had a couple of their beers, had some food. Actually, no, we didn't get any food because it was like in the middle of COVID. And the ordering stuff was weird. Which the one thing that was kind of annoying, they had like you could order a meat tray and you could also order a cheese platter separately, and it's like, why don't you just put them to one as one whole fucking charcuterie board? You ding dongs. But also too, there was also like a lot of like fish out of water kind of thing too, because us being yokels up in the mountains, the whole like here's your menu's at your table. There's a QR code. Scan it. It'll pull up the menu, and then when you're ready to order, you use that QR code to type in what you want, and then it'll get sent, texted back to the whatever the hell, and they'll bring you out whatever you order, instead of like the people waiting on you.
Talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm used to people talking over here.
Yeah. I felt like, Jared Benson, like, hey, doing his like, boomer shtick, like,
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think more and more, especially breweries, are kind of adopting that serve yourself, motherfucker, sort of thing at the
well, it's so
basically
weird too, because like at Fiden's when we went, like, oh, you can just sit at the bar, order a beer. It's like, yeah, you want food? Oh no, there's a kiosk behind you.
Yeah, that's
where you go up to and you order the.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, now it's kind of like, go over to that machine, put in your food order, and then over there is where the food comes out. Just keep a watch for it and go fucking get it yourself when you're ready. When it comes out, you fucking march yourself right over there and you can pick it up.
Wait. You didn't tip the server?
Ain't nobody carrying it over to you in this place. You're going to march yourself over there. Get your steps in on your watch. Get it yourself. I know what you mean.
Well, Brooklyn is a brewery that we both do like. We don't really drink it that often because it does kind of fall into the category of Sam Adams and Saranac for us, of like a brewery that, was one of the first starter, craft breweries that we got into.
I think too, they don't do a whole lot of like experimentation with their beers. Like they have like a solid lineup of maybe like 10 to 12 beers that they're constantly making, and they don't really go out of their way to like do different types of beers. So I'm always on the lookout for new stuff. When I see like there's Sriracha Ace that I've it's always out, right? And so I don't ever like take that opportunity to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna grab this like regular standard pack that they have out every day of the year. So I think that's part of the reason why I don't generally gravitate to their beers.
I was gonna say too, I have very fond memories. It's been forever since I've had one, because Lord knows, I think also too, they kind of suffered the Sam Adams and couple other breweries that not necessarily Saranac, but like breweries that used to have a lot more prominence up here that were like readily available, like a Long Trail or
Harpoon.
Yep, the Harpoon's definitely a big one. Like one of the first craft IPAs that I remember fondly loving that you can't even find around here anymore. I don't even know if they even still make it. Is their East India IPA.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. and that was like a nice West Coast standard, West Coast style IPA that had, big hops, nice and piney, it was very malty, it was great. And that's definitely one of the first IPAs that sticks out in my head of one that I've really enjoyed and, kind of miss. And like I said, I don't think I've seen it in like 8 years. So I think the last time I had it, I was kind of like, I think they changed the recipe on it because it doesn't taste the same. But could be wrong. Could be nostalgia blinding me on that.
All right, so let's talk about the beer itself that we got here, though. We've got so this came out at like I think the end of 2023, and I saw it in there. I thought I would grab it.
You should have asked for a markdown when you did.
I know I should have, yeah. And I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to grab this is because it is a black brewed beer brewery. It's brewed by Garrett Oliver. He's their head brewmaster, and he's become something of a little bit of a celebrity in like the beer world. He's an author, a beer sommelier, which is very prestigious, really, because there's not that many. And also a dapper motherfucker too. Like any picture you see him in, he's looking like fly as hell in his outfits, his jackets and polka dot button ups. So props to him. He's always looking good. So, but anyway, the beer that we have today is Black Ops, and it's their barrel aged stout. And this one in particular is the barrel aged stout that's been barrel aged in Four Roses bourbon barrels. So Four Roses is another New York based distillery. Probably, I don't know exactly where, but I'm guessing it's down by Brooklyn area, New York City sort of thing.
Let's take a look.
I think they're in let's see. Visit us. They are in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. So they're not in New York. I think they have a bottling facility in New York though.
Which is good because you know what? You can't call it bourbon if it's distilled in New York. It's not bourbon.
That's true. No, their bottling is in Kentucky. So
totally strike two. Strike two. Look at you. Just brazenly, banding about things like
wrong information. But they're taking Four Roses bourbon barrels, and they're barrel aging this Black Ops stout, and now we have the results of that barrel aging process. Now I know you're not a huge barrel aged person. You're not a big old BA fan. But I decided I was going to get it anyway. And I actually picked up two different barrel aged beers today.
I was going to say, way to put me on the spot.
Yeah, sorry, but I know it's true. And this one in particular is 12%, so it's a pretty hefty guy. So I'll let you go first. What do you think about this barrel aged stout?
Well, let me take a sip. Or as the man who has sold it to you would say, a pound.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Like, it's pretty good. Every other sip, when I sip it, sometimes, like when you were first drinking it, you said the bourbon is very prominent. I get that. Like on the sip, I'll get a very prominent, bourbon, oaky, bourbon sweetness, which isn't really even a sweetness, but it's like, best way to kind of describe it, a little like, oaky and spicy. But on other sips, when I drink it, you will get the cocoa, you will get that little hint of vanilla on the back end, making it like a nice coffee, kind of nice coffee, chocolatey flavors to it. Which kind of does make it like a nice, like a sipping experience, because those four flavors are kind of playing about, and you get to kind of enjoy them, like as you're drinking them. Getting a little bit of each one on each sip. The more I'm drinking it, definitely more of like I can taste the alcohol on my breath. So you definitely can feel like after kind of drinking like I've only probably had like 20% of this right now. You definitely can feel like the alcohol heat on your breath. Um, it's definitely not bad. It's definitely not a bad bourbon aged stout. Again, like I've said it a billion times on the podcast, my main issue with is usually there's no real balance between the beer. It's either full throttle bourbon and oak, and it overpowers whatever the stout is trying to portray, or you don't really get it at all, and the gimmick doesn't, quite work well. I would say this is, a pretty good shot at that. Now, would I ever go out of my way to like pick this up? No. Just because like for at least for me and my palate, it's always like a big gamble because it's like, when am I going to be in the fucking mood for something like this? So, but if you're one of these people, those craft beer drinkers that sits high on the throne of stouts and bitches and moans at anything that's not this type of stout, you would probably enjoy this. If you're somebody who doesn't, then this isn't for you. But it's definitely not bad. It's definitely worth giving a shot and trying. But it's definitely something I wouldn't, revisit constantly.
Yeah, I mean, so I like this one. I guess I'll preface by saying, like, I don't think it's probably the best bourbon barrel aged stout that I've had. I think for me, it's a little bit too flagrant with its use of the bourbon, where it's very, very prominent. And I like bourbon a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big straight bourbon drinker. But in my stout, especially, like, I don't want it to be particularly overpowering to the point where I don't really get a whole lot else. And I feel like with this one, with the Black Ops, I do occasionally get that hint of like, oh, here's a little bit of like the cocoa nib roasty malt flavor of the stout. But for the most part, I would say the majority of the time drinking this, I'm getting a very, very sweet bourbon, oaky, slightly vanilla-ish flavor to it. And while I think that's pretty good, I think it might be off-putting for some people, especially considering how overpowering that bourbon flavor is. I'm actually curious how long they actually barrel aged this, for one thing. With the 12%, I'm going to guess that it was a little bit longer than normal. I feel like whatever the case may be, I think it's just maybe a little bit too strong, heavy on the bourbon notes. I wish that there was just a little bit, maybe toned down just a tad, a little bit less sweet than it is too. The sweetness is kind of a little bit overpowering here. I wish I just got a little bit more of that like cocoa chocolate taste to it. So it's pretty good, and I think the more I've been sipping it, the more I have been appreciating it. And that's part of the thing that you do with barrel aged stouts is that you sip them. You're not really going to be like chugging them down and like, all right, give me another. They're one of those things that you kind of sit and savor because of the way that the flavors are going to wash over your taste buds. So I like it, and as I've been drinking it, I think I've become appreciating it a little bit more, and I might actually bump up my score of my rating a little bit on this beer. But I do think that it could have been better. It's probably not the best barrel aged beer that I've had. But it's still a pretty good experience. And you know what? I'll say I'm interested to try Four Roses bourbon. Never had it before. I'll give it a shot. See what it's like. So, yeah, it's cool. It's a cool concept for Brooklyn. Kind of nice to see them doing a small batch edition like this. Something that they don't often do, at least as far as I've seen. Experimenting, at least getting it out. Really, maybe they experiment and they have it at the brewery, but actually coming towards us is not that often. So cool to see, and glad I got it at least to try it out. So nice. Yeah. All right, let's talk Foxy Brown. Let's get into it.
See.
Fox. Who does the soundtrack on this one? I know at the end of the movie it says it's like
Willie Hutch.
Willie Hutch. It's a big thing back then. Blaxploitation movies, like, get a fucking guy to do the theme. Make a nice theme. Put the name in it 17 times.
Pretty sure he did the whole soundtrack.
Yeah, I think he did too, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Foxy Brown, like we were talking about, it's a year after Coffy. Shares a lot of similarities with Coffy. In this one, Foxy is actually I don't think they really give her a profession. In Coffy, she is a nurse. In this one, she didn't really have a profession, but she does date a guy who's part of like the detective force, and he's been working on these cases on the streets.
Detective
force.
Everyone knows about the detective force,
and he's an informant for the agency. And so it's funny because when we first like kind of start out in this movie, you're meeting this guy and he's got his whole, his face is all bandaged, and Foxy Brown is visiting him in the hospital. And
he got plastic surgery.
Yeah, he's gotten plastic surgery, and you're kind of talking about it. He's like, baby, I'm getting the bandages off today. She's like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, what if I don't like you anymore? Because now you're not going to look the same. But I love this idea that this guy has gotten such extensive plastic surgery that, previously an informant known to criminal enterprise on the streets, now all of a sudden don't have to worry about it. Like, and it has changed nothing about his lifestyle, right? Still dating Foxy, which was the same as her, her boyfriend previously. Still doing everything the same, just got a different face, so no one's gonna recognize him. It's kind of a funny situation. I don't quite know how it's gonna work out realistically, and it apparently doesn't really work out that well realistically. But I liked it. And not only that, but at the hospital, you do find out that he's got a meaty dick, because they're like, Foxy Brown and Michael, they're getting it on in the hospital bed, which seems like a really uncomfortable place to try to do anything like that. But then a nurse walks in and she's like, oh, no, you're not doing that here. And comes in and just basically slaps his dick. Just like a big old right to the dick. Like, get that thing down, because that's not happening in my room.
That's the great thing about this movie. There's a couple of times where people, are about to get it on, and then someone sees them, and it's like, oh, there's your cock. It's just sitting there at 10 up.
Yeah, it's not the only erection joke that is in this movie. There's another one where Foxy's a prostitute with another woman, and they are
the judge
meant to escort a judge, yeah. And they basically pull his pants down, and they're like, what am I supposed to work with here? Like, I would do something with it, but I can't find it. So it's it's not the only erection joke that we get in this movie. And there's your exploitation, fellas.
Da-da-da.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, the idea of this movie is kind of interesting, right? Because the whole idea is that Foxy and her boyfriend, which name was like, what was it, like Donovan or something like that previously, now it's Michael.
Dalton,
that's what it is, yeah.
And then Michael Anderson, which, by the way, couple of things. Her undercover federal informant boyfriend, Dalton Ford, 1, was an undercover agent. 2, there's a fucking newspaper ad like, undercover agent thought to be missing. How do you...
Right.
What do you mean, undercover agent missing? Apparently he's not undercover if you're fucking like...
Not that well undercover.
Yeah. 3...
Everybody knows it.
3, I was laughing every time that picture from that article popped up because he looks like fucking Malcolm X. Like that picture.
Oh yes, with the glasses.
Yeah, and the
right.
goatee. It's like
looking so studious.
you just like it's like that's brother Malcolm. Nation of Islam. Let's go. But
No, I know. Yeah, no, it was hilarious too. And then the other part that's really funny that kind of sets everything in motion is like, so Foxy Brown, she has a brother, Link. He's kind of he's strung out dopehead. He's dealing drugs. He's in with the wrong crowd. He's gotten in with drug dealers and basically skimmed off them. And
he got in with a white woman.
That's right. Yeah, the wrong crowd, the white people. And so basically, she's been housing him because he can't be seen by any of the people in the gang. And so eventually, when Michael comes to her house, he like takes this picture of, like you said, of Malcolm X, and he like draws like a nose on it, just like one line of a nose, and he's like, "Wait a second, that fellow looks familiar." And I was thinking, like, what kind of plastic surgery did this Michael go through, where one dude who's strung out on like heroin can just like draw on his picture and be like, "Yeah, that's him. That's the guy." It's like, that's not a very good plastic surgeon then. Like, very ineffective. You went through this whole, I don't know how long, like what, 6-week procedure or something to get yourself all fixed up with a new face, and somebody puts it together in like 30 seconds when they see you. That's not it's not effective whatsoever. So he was always marked for death. But yeah, basically the whole movie, Foxy Brown, revolves around Michael Anderson being murdered, gets gunned down in the street by two thugs that work for Catherine Wall, who's a model.
It's Karen Carpenter.
Catherine Loader, but yeah, she does look a lot like Karen Carpenter. She's basically
well, as I say too, that when Michael gets shot, it's the funniest thing ever because it's the slowest drive-by ever. And that guy's like sticking out of the window of the car for like a good 2 minutes as they slowly drive by it, and then plugs Michael. Just...
Yeah, I did notice that he's just literally leaning out of the car with a gun for. And it's funny too because they talk about, they're like, "Well, should we get closer and make sure it's him?" And then they don't, and then they just fucking shoot him. They don't really care. But we know that they are not very good at their jobs anyways, because we've seen that a couple times in the movie. Yeah, this Catherine Wall is she's like got a model agency. She runs this model agency, and then she's also got drug dealing on the side, and basically is the main baddie in this movie because in a lot of blaxploitation movies, the white people are the bad guys, right? They're corruptors. They're the people who work behind the scenes to keep people indentured, and that's kind of the idea within Foxy Brown. And something that's kind of brought up quite a few times is that as the white people are indenturing them, it's no longer like servitude in the sense of like actual slavery, but it's servitude in slavery of dealing drugs, getting caught in the drug trade. So that sort of business within this world is really what everybody's trying to fix. And that's what Michael was working on. And then you also see that there's a bunch of vigilantes that are kind of like, like the Black Panther Party, something like that, that are...
Yeah. Well, at the end, yes. Yeah, Black Panther.
Yeah, that are basically working to try to stop the drug trade in the town.
Or as they like to say, the local neighborhood committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and so I guess the idea here is like a lot of this is really similar to Coffy. Coffy's like out to get vengeance. Foxy Brown's out to get vengeance. She plans her next moves after Michael's death and basically says, "I'm going to infiltrate this drug, cartel, not a cartel, but this drug gang, and take them out and finally get to the top and deal my vengeance on the people who did this to Michael." And it's similar to what Coffy does, except in this case, I think in Foxy Brown, there's a couple things that change. It's more exploitative. It's got a lot more exploitation elements to it. And then it's also a lot zanier, I would say, than anything that Coffy does. Because Coffy's a pretty straightforward crime drama, right? But Foxy Brown incorporates a lot of elements, a lot of disparate elements that try to just like mix up the plot a little bit. Like you get like weird sequences like a lesbian brawl in a bar.
Yeah, I did. What the hell was up with that? With like they go to a lesbian bar and all of a sudden there's a brawl.
I love that lesbian brawl too because at first it's like, okay, Foxy Brown walks in and this lady's being a bitch. So she smashes her in the face with a stool. And I was like, okay, all right, that's fine.
I got a black belt stool, she said.
Yeah. But then after that, after the brawl starts to break out, it's like, yeah, then there's a murder. Because the one prostitute that Foxy Brown's been working with smashes a woman's face into a jukebox, electrocuting her. And it's like, okay, that just went from like, small time fight in a bar to like, yeah, that's manslaughter. Which I think is hilarious. But yeah, the movie has a lot of weird scenarios like that where I feel like the plot kind of just goes places that it maybe doesn't need to go just for the sake of it, just for getting things in, like a lesbian barroom brawl that's kind of reminiscent of like the women in prison movies or something, that Jack Hill is really familiar with. It just kind of moves from weird plot line to plot line. Or, there's the whole rape scene basically where she is where Foxy is basically kidnapped and held hostage by rednecks in their
Stales of eyes.
In their drug den and raped, and she has to escape from that. So it's like all of a sudden that kind of just happens in the movie. It just like comes out of nowhere, and you just go with it because it's what it is. Blaxploitation. What do you think about that? What do you think about how the movie moves from its plotting? Like, is it natural?
This is why, sorry to interrupt, this is why the film is much more like a Bond film. Because it's like, after you get like your gritty, vigilante style setup, it becomes, this escapade of like one kind of ridiculous event from one ridiculous event. Like very, like, again, like of the time, Roger Moore era Bond, just like one stupid thing to the next. Like, I'm going to pretend to be a prostitute and go undercover and we're going to have prostitute shenanigans. And then, oh no, I get captured and the guy's got a whip. And then when he whips and, and then I set them all on fire and here's my whip, and the lesbian bar. And it's just, one just like kind of ridiculous thing after the next, like, outlandish and cartoonish. And that's like, for me, and again, it's probably not fair to compare, but you have been the entire time too. And I can't help but compare as well. Like, what makes, Coffy an enjoyable film is the fact that it is like more of a grounded, vigilante film. And this one, though also a vigilante, technically a vigilante film, it's another Death Wish. It's basically just these ridiculous things going on,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this one is just a step up on the exploitation ladder from Coffy. Like Coffy was, in terms of a blaxploitation movie, pretty tame in the exploitation elements that it had. The thing that made it blaxploitation was, of course, just the subject matter, the adherence to the subject matter of what made a blaxploitation in the 70s. Here, this is more like a black exploitation movie. It has black characters. it has a semblance of idea from the blaxploitation genre in terms of theme, where there's an interchangeable villain basically,
Mm-hmm.
and it instead of the elements of blaxploitation of like fighting against the societal norms and things like that, this movie just doubles down on the action, the ridiculous elements that are thrown at the viewer like throughout the movie as Foxy starts to go through her process of trying to get revenge. And it just has all of that in much more detail than what Coffy does. And I think that here, I guess I'll just come right out and say I think Coffy is the better movie if we're comparing the two being very similar to each other. Foxy Brown is one of those movies that some people might find more fun because it has, like we said, the weird elements to it, like flying in a plane, lesbian barroom brawl, making fun of a judge's dick, things like that just kind of like
well, you know how
quickly get
important
rattled off.
Those first 20 minutes of plot setup and character building are, because in this 91 minute long film, in the 3 paragraphs that are written for the plot of this film, the first 20 minutes of this film are literally summed up in the first sentence.
Sure. Right.
Like the second sentence is she links her boyfriend's murderers to a modeling agency run by Stevie Elias and Catherine Wall that services local judges, congressmen, etc. That's literally 30 minutes into the film. That's the second. So that's how those like that original setup is just like it's just kind of done like we don't care about this. We want to get to the fun stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't disagree that the film is fun in a lot of those situations. I mean, there's a lot of nudity to this one. There's a lot more nudity than Coffy. There's a lot more exploitative usage of Foxy's or of Pam Grier as Foxy than there is in Coffy. Here, Foxy is literally becoming a prostitute. She's having to go into the service to try to get her revenge, and so there's that goes along with that is just the exploitative elements of you get a lot more Pam Grier naked. You get these sexy 70s style moments, and I'm not saying that that's a bad or a good thing. I'm saying that in this scenario in the movie, it just definitely feels a lot more like exploitative. I don't know. How do you feel that it does in terms of a blaxploitation movie? Like, is it successful at being a blaxploitation movie in the sense that we think of now in terms of, blaxploitation movies are generally seen as, sort of a triumphant, genre of film at the time. How do you feel about Foxy Brown in that canon?
It's all right. I think it kind of transcends blaxploitation because of the fact that it's so becomes such a kind of a goofy mess, and kind of becomes its own little thing. Like it kind of like transcends that very subtle genre. Like it's not specifically. I don't think it's specifically like very blaxploitation-y. Not that that's a bad thing. But I think that's why, like, if you were to think of like when people originally think of like Pam Grier films, Foxy's always usually the first one to people think of because it's more got more of a mainstream feel to it. Coffy's definitely a lot more, kind of blaxploitation-y with like its premises and kind of overall motifs. Here it's kind of the same thing, but again, because it's cranked up to, kind of cartoonish levels, it goes above and beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably, popularity-wise, I think Foxy Brown may be the more entertaining movie than Coffy. Because I think it has more of those elements that just make it stand out. But yeah, I mean, I think they both have their share of interesting elements, and like I think the end of Foxy Brown kind of comes to an interesting standpoint where she does finally infiltrate Catherine Wall's model agency. She gets to Catherine Wall and she just shoots her once and says, "I want you to suffer." Basically, like I'm not going to kill you.
Well, she didn't just shoot her in the arm. She cut her boyfriend's cock off.
That is true.
Put it in
Castrated.
Castrate him, put him in a bag, and she's like, "Kill me! I got nothing left to live for."
I do love though when she gives her the peanut, the dick in the container and
in a pickle jar.
Immediately, she's like, "No, Steve!" Like just from looking at that container, she can tell. Yep, that's his severed member. God damn it! It's hilarious.
Is it hard or flaccid?
Well, I don't know. Hard to say. We don't really get a good look at it. So this movie does have its fair share of penises, doesn't it? Yeah, I forgot about that too.
Yeah. It's funny to think that it's been like 15 years since I've seen this movie, and I totally forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not something.
Well, it's kind of a quick one too, because like she gives the jar, you don't really get to see anything, and then they set it down, and you can see in the background, like, oh, there's a penis floating there. So.
What would have been great if she's like, "What's that?" It's a pickle jar. And like, bread and butter. Oh,
why did you bring me those type of pickles? Yeah, I mean, so the film, like, it has a lot of these crazy moments. I do enjoy it. It's just that I don't know it's as effective as some of the other blaxploitation movies. I don't know if it comes to the same conclusion, but I think it's the natural extension of Jack Hill exploring like the popularity of the blaxploitation element in Coffy, kind of infusing that with his women in prison movies, and it's sort of like a natural exponential increase in the content that he was creating. So it's like I think it's interesting as a movie. I don't think it's as good as some of the other blaxploitation movies that were coming out around the same time, though it does get a lot of its popularity from that time period.
I was gonna say too, kind of like the fact that like the whole setup of like, again, like dopes being slung in LA, and they're beating up we see the Panthers beating up dope dealers and sending them off onto trains, to get out of town, because that's the kind of shit that's bringing them down. All that kind of stuff loses like meaning, like it doesn't resonate anywhere near as like with Coffy, because it's like, again, like after her boyfriend gets killed, and it's like, all right, now I gotta go, fuck a congressman to get my revenge. And it's just like, like that whole, by the end of the film, like, it's like, why is she doing this again? Like, because it's like kind of so like gets put on the back burner.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, kind of the disparate elements of the storyline kind of get mixed up with each other, and you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess that's why she's doing this, and that's what led her to this. But if you're like, it's definitely has like that mix of like, why are all of these things happening? Yeah, I can see that. You kind of forget what's going on in the plot to like the reason why the story is going this way. And I think too, looking at Jack Hill's filmography, I think this was the last blaxploitation movie that he actually directed. So this would be the last one. So interesting. Said all he needed to say, I guess. Anything else that we didn't cover about Foxy Brown before we wrap up with a rating?
What did you think of the gore? A lot of squibs in this,
dude. The one squib of the guy getting shot in the forehead, and it pops out twice. Pretty funny.
Would you like? I say, how'd you like the guy that got shot in the head and then like laid on the bed and you could see like the blood trickling down.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a gorier movie too. It definitely has the a lot more showcasing of like getting shot, death scenes. So it's definitely like trying to push the boundary there as well. And of course the castration scene, like that's not something that we would have seen in Coffy either. It's definitely more explicit, and I like it. I like the squibs. The squibs look good, especially considering like sometimes movies of that time didn't even have squibs, so you would just hear the gunshot and somebody fall backwards. So I think they did a pretty good job with that. I like the additional gore. I think it's pretty good.
There's a good amount of homophobia in the movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's definitely something that didn't age well, because every time anybody
insult somebody,
yeah, it's like, you faggot motherfucker. Yeah, it's certainly alarming at first when you hear it, but yeah, you got to just kind of get into the time period, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of homophobia in this movie, which is funny too, because then they work in that lesbian scene. So I don't really know, like, are we like?
But again, like it's like it's so fish out of water. Like it's such a fish out of water thing. I think like somebody sat there, and again, maybe you're right. I'm not familiar with Jack Hill's, women in prison. And again, that's like not even a genre of film that would ever register on my radar as something to watch, because it just seems so fucking. Is that like what inspired Super Jail? Women in prison movies? But but no, like so like oh well, we don't have enough runtime for this. What if we just had him go up to like this lesbian bar and have him have a little couple, in between. What's funny too is when they're down on the farm and she's well, I guess it's not funny, but getting getting raped by those two rednecks and stuff down at the ranch. The one guy, it's that plays the guy with like the bald head and the mustache, big beefy dude. That's H.B. Haggerty, and he's a former professional wrestler. And the entire time, as I was looking at him, all I could think of is that superstar Billy Graham? Because that's also a professional wrestler, especially in the '70s. Like he's what inspired Hulk Hogan. But he looks just like fucking Billy Graham. Jesus Christ! So, no, it was Hard Boiled Haggerty.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, wrestled in AWA for Vern Gagne.
Oh.
Yeah, up in Minnesota. What I say? How? So, what'd you think of like the whole like end attack down in Mexico, and the Panthers showing up, and it's kind of like an A-Team moment. Like, couldn't you hear like the song play like da 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 da?
I like how they basically like get the police on their side too. They're like, you don't want to do that. Look, we're here. You don't want to do that. The police are pretty.
Let's say they say something racist until the Black Panthers show up with guns pointed at them, and they're like, "Oh, please don't kill me."
Yeah, I mean, in this movie though, they did make a pretty good job of showing the police ineffectuality. Like, because at the beginning of the movie, when Link is being targeted and the cops show up at this taco shop, and they're all eating tacos for their lunch or whatever.
Tacos and black coffee. What a fucking...
I know. I think they're maniacs, to be honest with you.
You know what the biggest crime in this whole movie? You know what the biggest crime in this whole movie is? The fact that a pastrami sandwich is only 90 cents.
That's true.
That's what, looking at that guy's, hot dog stand and seeing like all the things that were for sale. Pastrami is only 90 cents.
I don't know. I have to take offense to that taco too. It looked like it was a ton of lettuce on it.
Yeah, it's also hard shelled, so it's like you're eating nachos essentially. So.
But it's just funny because like the cops just like up and leave. This guy's basically saying like, "Oh, you guys don't want your coffee? You guys should drink the coffee. Coffee's really good here. You should drink it. You can't leave an empty cup, or you can't leave a full cup of coffee over here." They just leave. It's hilarious. It just shows the ineffectuality of the police in this movie.
Foxy's brother is a big piece of shit in this. Like Foxy should have killed him. Sold out his sister's boyfriend for 20 grand because he was in the hole. And the fact that she only shot him in the ear, skimmed his earlobe off.
And then broke all his stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's an asshole. I think he does end up dead. And she's just kind of like, my brother too? Darn. Yeah, basically she's like unaffected.
Oh no, not my brother.
Yeah. So.
I just find it funny too though, because I mean like after all that happens and it's like all of a sudden it's like, now what's she gonna do? She just ends up at the Black Panther down at the Black Panthers, like local party, and be like, listen, I need your help. And like, why would he help you? It's just kind of funny how they shoehorn him in. Like,
I know. All right, so on a scale of 0 to 10, you like them dark jokes. What would you give Foxy Brown?
Well, I was gonna say, you didn't rate Pam Grier's titties in this one.
Well, I wanted to be a little respectful of it.
Well,
I mean, she does show them a few times. They definitely do fall out a couple times. And
dude,
I think probably
a couple of the scenes, like Jesus Christ, when at the end when she shows up in Karen Carpenter's house and she's getting felt up, the guy literally like grabs her muff, like full up in there, and then like is like, and they're all, anytime she's in danger, they're constantly like, it's literally like a porn, constantly, just squeezing the shit out of her tits, like just like.
Yeah, not only that, but at one point she ends up with like a giant bruise on her too. Yeah, it's like to even more draw attention to them. Yeah, it's like I was saying, it's definitely more exploitative, both of the women in this movie in general, and then also Pam Grier, than Coffy ever was. I mean, I'm sure none of the male viewers were very perturbed by that, but it's certainly something to point out. Like, it's definitely more prevalent in this movie, and I feel like after Foxy Brown, she did a lot less nudity in most of the rest of the blaxploitation. First, for one thing, she didn't have to, right? She's Pam Grier now. You don't have to. Pam Grier shows up, says, if I'm going to be in this movie, I'm not doing the nudity anymore. So,
everyone, you say, you can just tell by the dress I'm wearing that, yeah, I got big tits.
Right, exactly. Like, fitting dress. What more do you need? The mystery is, the big attraction. So,
well, before we even get into the rating, so what do you think about, like, we'll touch briefly on it, like, just like on the whole, like, how it holds up as a kind of cultural and political touchstone?
I mean, I think that I think that we've seen Black Panther-esque movements done better. Like, obviously, the Spook Who Sat by the Door, much better at doing like the whole Black Panther vigilante element to it. With that said, I think Foxy Brown does it fine. I don't think that it is like culturally the movie to point to for blaxploitation genre or movement, because as you said, at this point, it's actually kind of moving away from the blaxploitation genre a little bit more than what we've seen. I think Coffy's really the touch point there, the one to point to and say, like, yeah, that was like where we really hit the bar for what the blaxploitation genre was doing. Here, I think the ideas are a little too disparate, but I mean, I think it does a pretty good job as an entertaining movie. It's just kind of moving away from what the blaxploitation movement was about. So I think it's still a good movie, still one to look at, but it's one of those movies where it's like, okay, that's where there was like that schism of like where blaxploitation kind of divided itself and went on to a different form of itself, if that makes sense. That's how I feel.
I think it's a good film, but I think kind of politics wise, it's very yes, it's Pam Grier being a badass. Yes, it's Pam Grier, getting to be empowered, but I don't think overall the film's very. I don't think overall the overall politics of the film is kind of something to be lauded, just because I don't think the film was trying to be that. Like, I know a lot of people see Foxy Brown and have thought of it as like this great, kind of like, feminist women empowering. And there's definitely that there, but I don't think the film overall is really trying to paint that picture. Because again, like, Coffy did a better job at like kind of construing politics. Here, like, again, it's more like a James Bond, Roger Moore film. There's a lot of tongue in cheek here. So like, like the whole Foxy being empowered by getting revenge, taking down drug kingpins, emasculating a man by castrating him. It's, I think, more, instead of done for politics, I think it's more done for showmanship. Like oh, that's kind of like a cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I it's not a knock against the film or anything. I just don't think, like, especially nowadays, like, politically, there's much to be gleaned from it. I think more, it's definitely, when you look back at it from today, it's definitely more, seems like if it's playing for the laughs and just straight film enjoyment than having any type of deep politics to it.
Yeah,
It's not not that that's bad, but I mean, like, again, like, not everything has to be the spook sat by the door. But I don't think, like, now when you watch it, it's like this wonderful tapestry of politics of the time.
Yeah, I agree.
So
right.
anywho,
So
on your rating,
let's give it a rating. Yeah, you like the dark meat phrases in this movie, because there's a lot of them. What would you?
There's a couple in here that kind of made me chuckle, but also were terrible. That I can't say.
Right,
because they're so blatantly, meow. I'll give Foxy Brown what was the scale?
0 out of 10.
Thank you, Captain Obvious. The scale,
The
your rating system
on your so you like the dark meat phrases.
Okay, that's so out of 0 to 10, you like the dark meat phrases.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 7.5. It's a fun film. I think it's a rather fun, and it's kind of funny, like, because again, it's been about over a decade since the last time I saw this film. It's a fun, stupid romp, but it's a fun, enjoyable watch. Pam Grier does I wouldn't say she's great in this film. She does an adequate job. None of the other actors are terrible or anything. They're all, just kind of filling in roles. It's got the same basic plot line as Coffy, but it's amped up to 12. I think the violence, the ultra violence and some of the effects and stuff are what kind of make the film more enjoyable, and the fact that it's more kind of a just random, almost like it's a vigilante film, but it's also super spy kind of, is why the film is kind of enjoyable. Because again, the overall themes and motifs and all that are totally taken aback by what Foxy's doing in the entire film, what Pam Grier's doing in this film. That being said, as cartoonishy and outlandish as the film gets, like it's good, but it's nothing like I wouldn't like if you were to ask me like kind of go through the pantheon of like films that and this film it really isn't as much anymore, but definitely when we were younger in the early 2000s, Foxy Brown was still kind of like this part of the cultural zeitgeist. I can kind of see why it's kind of fallen out because, like, yes, it's a touchstone, but there's nothing here comparatively to the blaxploitation genre where I'd be like, well, this is the one you have to watch because there's nothing really outstanding about it, but there's nothing offensive about it. It's a fun, adventurous 70s romp. So, like, 7.5 for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm going to give it a 7. I think that it's a fairly fun movie from blaxploitation standpoint. I think that it probably like it's not as good as some of the other blaxploitation movies that really stick to the main topics and themes of blaxploitation genre. I think Coffy is probably the better film here, but it does a pretty good job of trying to one up what happened with Coffy. Interestingly, like this is definitely by far not one of the worst blaxploitation movies of the genre. Like you can really go downhill with some of the other blaxploitation movies that have not been like have little recognition. So with that said, like it's really fun, it's really entertaining. I don't know that it hits all the highs of that genre so much. Like you said, I think Pam Grier here is serviceable, but not great as Foxy. Often it seems like she's just reading off a cue card. Like somebody just gave her lines like right before the scene and she just read them. And perhaps that's direction, perhaps that's like playing off of other actors, but whatever the case, like I don't think she's amazing in this one. She's definitely been better elsewhere. I think this is like it's definitely one of those movies where the events that happen in it are meant to be more entertaining than actually like sitting down and thinking about the plot. Because if you do that too much, you strain yourself trying to figure out like where getting revenge leads to being a prostitute, leads to being raped by rednecks, leads to flying in an airplane. You know what I mean? Like all of those elements, they don't really match up that much. But if you just kind of like watch it for entertainment, it's a pretty fun movie. So I think I'll give it 7 out of 10. There are definitely better blaxploitation movies, but it's fun for what it is. So. All right, so that ends our discussion on Foxy Brown. Hope you enjoyed it. What are we doing next time?
I don't know. I picked this one, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, like, I am leaning towards, like, I would like to do Madam Web because it is getting so lambasted that it would be fun to do, I think.
It's funny because about that, I've been getting a lot of like pictures on Facebook, like Madam Web, like Dakota Johnson at the Madam Web, premiere, and it's just her in this like dress that's not even a dress; it's just like her ass and everything is showing. It's like stupid. Why would you do that? What's the point?
Because it made it to your Facebook page about Madam Web. Or were you going to go see Madam Web before? But now that you see Dakota Johnson's ass shine through in a transparent dress, now you might go see it.
No. Well, it's like a dress, but it's not even a dress. It's like just like chainmail that she's wearing, and like everything's hanging. No, I know.
Out. Yeah, I've seen the pictures too. They
but I mean, like, too. But no, as I already said, I'm comic book movie out. Like, I don't care. Like any of these, like I don't care. I'm like Marvel movie number 54. I don't care anymore. Like there's just too much. There's just too much to keep up with. I don't care. I could not care any less. Like, do something different. I don't care. Like,
well, maybe we finally do Asteroid City.
I know. I bought the Blu-ray months ago. I still haven't watched it yet.
So yeah, maybe we do that one.
Well, we're due. We're almost like we're doing like a Wes Anderson film a year now.
Yeah.
I can't wait for us to get to Darjeeling.
I know. see if we enjoy that one anymore in our older age.
Well, I love
Yeah.
Darjeeling just because it's got the Kinks, Lola versus the Power Man, and the Money Go Round Part 1 as like the soundtrack to that film, and that's the movie that really got me into the Kinks back in 2006.
Well, there you go.
So
A reason to love it.
yeah, I mean I didn't like the movie, but yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? That would be kind of fun. Maybe instead of Asteroids 2, we should do Darjeeling.
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's fine.
Do a nice revisit. Well, first, before I make such an ambitious statement, let's see where I can watch that. Is it on Amazon where I can rent it? Because if not, then fuck me.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to do it again and see if our viewpoint still stands. That we didn't enjoy that one as much as.
Well, it's on fucking Disney Plus. I don't. What the fuck? Who has Disney Plus?
No, it's not. That's in like Canada where Hulu and Disney Plus are combined.
It's on. Okay, it's on
not
Amazon.
on Disney Plus. No,
it is on Amazon. It's only 90 minutes long. I feel like that film was 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to think about. Yeah. So yeah, we'll think about it. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll think about what we want to do. Could be
maybe we'll just do a nice Wes Anderson month.
There you go. Could be that. All right. Well, thanks for listening to our episode on blaxploitation movies, specifically Foxy Brown. Hope you enjoyed our Black History Month coverage. I'm sure we didn't do any justice to it, but we tried. We tried.
Listen, it's something that's well trodden ground at this point. So, like, what do you want from us? Joe Schmoes.
That's right.
We're not. We're not cinephiles. We just like to talk about them.
That's right. So yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully you want to subscribe to us. So if you do, find us on pretty much any podcast app you can think of. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, our home base at Anchor.fm, which is now Spotify. Subscribe to us on there. Leave us a nice review. We are on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for us, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. And we have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. Write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to consider. And we will definitely think about it. Also, you can donate to us on our Patreon page or at our Spotify page. Any donations you send our way will go back towards beer, so we appreciate that in advance. We hope to see you back for our next episode in 2 weeks. And until then,
take care. Joe Rogan gives us 2 stars out of 5.